Hello there, in this clip from my Comedians Comedian podcast. Hello there, I'm Stuart Goldsmith, and in this clip from my Comedians Comedian podcast, Desiree Burch from Taskmaster and almost everything else tells us exactly why she is so turbocharged. So, something that will be immediately apparent to the listener is that you are on turbo, right? Yeah. You talk fast, right?
I talk fast and too much, and I don't breathe, and so, my voice could benefit from that.
Do you feel you talk too much, or do you feel that you talk the appropriate amount?
I don't know that I talk too much. I think that I don't... I think that this, the way that I speak is a holdover from, everything about our personality is a holdover from like our youth and our trauma and all that other stuff. But I think that I tend to, once I get the reins, hold on to them because I don't necessarily trust that if I allow for even a breath that I will continue to have them. I think part of that is the general thing of being a woman and being sort of like not listened to, cut off, whatever, that sort of but like we've all sort of talked about that a little bit, and also being a middle kid that was just sort of like, I exist, like, and it's something that I would like to work on about myself because I would like to breathe more. I think that would be good for me as a human being and just for everything. And as a comic as well, because sometimes people really love that energy, but it's a thing that you have to ride, right? Because sometimes it's just enough and sometimes it's so much the words aren't coming out or they're not understanding or it seems like you're nervous or, and it's all of those things, but it is about riding that, it is its own drug, adrenaline, and that kind of thing that you're putting out when you do comedy, and you have to find your way of riding it as opposed to letting it ride you.
Yes. Are there times when you feel it riding you?
Yeah, I think that, I and it just depends on the night and the show. Sometimes, obviously if you, the longer you've done comedy, the more you can play off any scenario, and other people will be like, that was great. And you'll be like, yeah, okay. But, because for you, it's a thing of like, I let whatever was going on in my head or the timing or whatever the day get a hold of me more than I would have liked to have done. And so I feel that I am someone who probably got into performance and comedy because I'm funny, and that was a survival skill I developed pretty early on in life. And also because I, like many of us, am a secret control freak. And so as a comedian or an artist, writer, actor, whatever, you get to control the narrative a bit more, right? And so if I'm putting the words out and the ideas out, I get to control the narrative about me. And I'm like, no, don't look at me the way that I can feel you looking at me. Look at me the way I'm telling you to look at me.
Yes, gotcha.
And sometimes that controlling thing, it only takes you so far. It's, it's rocket boosters. It gets you out there, but you can't orbit or be free or explore if you're constantly on that, sort of
yes, you're launching. If
yes.
You're always trying to achieve
if you're always launching
velocity,
yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like you've already escaped and now you're just shooting off into nowhere, and soon you'll be out of the gravitational pull, and that's not what you want. It's not what we want. Like, we want you to hover around and be here. And so I think that learning anything takes a while, right? And sometimes you get it right and you're like, I got it. And then the next time you screw it up and you're like, okay, I guess I didn't get it. Like, you always have to prove over and over again that you've learned the thing or that you can further master or just exist in that thing. And so for me, I think that's one of the things that I want to grow in more as a performer is just the trust that I deserve to be here, which I know I do because I've been doing this, in some form or another, like, theater or solo performance comedy for like over half my life. But at the same time, there's like a 6-year-old who like doesn't know that yet. And I'm just like, bitch, get it together. Like, we got other stuff to do. So yeah.
Have you made any conscious efforts or experiments to try to slow down, to like, or to do a gig where you go, okay, it's going to be escape velocity for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to change gear and see if you can achieve the same sort of impact with a different pace?
That sounds like a good idea. No, I'm kidding. I have done so. Sometimes it is about how you structure the set. Sometimes, because you're mixing things, and sometimes usually the best anyone feels as a comic, and I'm probably generalizing, but one of the best times is when you're doing new material, right? Because it is the like failure is expected. Right. And putting that in your mind of like, oh, you're going to fail at some point or several points is great to just be like, okay, great. Let's put all of that other, like, I need to make sure that I do this killing thing every single time or whatever. I need to be the best. I need to overachieve this gig, whatever it is in your head. Put that aside and be like, I'm really excited to say this one line. Like, I've written all these things, but I'm really excited to say this thing. So I think that when I put the measures in place, sometimes it's about being like, okay, I know I need to start with something that makes them trust that they're going to have a good time and they're going to laugh, and if you make them wait too long for that, then they're like, I don't know about you. And then you get to a place somewhere in the rhythm where you're like, okay, well, this bit, I don't know, I'm just trying it out. Let's see. I can play, I can talk to them and trying to structure in fun playtime in there, parent yourself a little bit in it is good. I think the other time it happens is when you've done like an Edinburgh run or some other thing where you've done the thing a lot in a row and it is in your muscles. And then at that point, you either know when the laughs tend to come, and so that you can pause and rest in certain places, like where your pit stops are on the road trip that you're on, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get to this place and then we'll sit there and have lunch. Or you're like, oh, it's when you've done a thing a million times and you're like, oh, I actually want to play here, and remembering that it's play and remembering that it's comedy and remembering that it's funny for them or fun for them if it's funny and fun for you as well, as opposed to getting in that part of your head where it's like there are expectations to be met and I've got to do the big report at demonstration at the conference and this is high stakes and like there's so many times when I have to be like, Desiree, it's not brain surgery. It like no one lives or dies. If you don't even live or die, even if you die on stage, it's like, okay, you get a taxi right after the gig, you go home, you watch some Netflix, the next day is the next day. So like, I have to do these weird sort of mechanisms in my head to be like, let's take it down a notch because this is supposed to be fun for you and me. I'm making this sound like it's so difficult, but like, it is comedy, but it is a thing that like, people either think like, that's a job or, oh my God, I could never do that, and there's like nothing in between. And I think it's up to us sometimes to be like, it can be in between sometimes. Like it can be, I'm going to work. I have good days at work. I have great days at work. I have bad days at work. I have horrible, never again days at work. And like all of those are going to come. So let's just be present for today and see what I can do today. And that's a good Zen mindset to have. I'd like to pretend I have that all the time. Yeah. I don't. I just need to remind myself to do that,
It's a good kind of affirmation, isn't it?
Yes.
Kind of something that's like what I like about that is you're sort of seizing control, or it's an attempt to seize control of the absolute storm of one's personality in the storm of comedy, and like the massive lack of consistency or rhythm sometimes, that it actually it's nuts, as is life, but it's an examined life and it's a projected, performed, heightened kind of expression of life. It's nuts and it's constantly zigging and zagging in every direction. So actually to have something of a mantra and go, this is a day at work. Some days at work are good, some days at work are bad.
Yes.
That seems like a sensible.
And to put it back into a realm of in which it makes sense, because it is you all the time, which is what many other people don't have to deal with in their work. Right, where it's like they're presenting themselves all the time. I think that's why a lot of people go, oh, I could never do that, because it really is the examined self and presenting themselves and, turning inside out on a regular basis. Even if you have rehearsed it a million times, like, oh, yeah. Like you're putting it into this place where it's like, this is a story of myself that I can tell. So it's separated from myself, but there are still tethers, like there's still an umbilical cord feeding that. And like when that thing is rejected, that's why all the feedback comes through that cord and it hits you in your soul, because it was your soul that you put out there, even if you did it in this very sort of dead butterfly pressed in a sort of form. It's still connected to a life force that is you and that you have to live with. So I don't know, it is important to manage that. Like we do take for granted, and because we have this comedy protective shell of defense that we've learned for whatever reasons to have and then to manipulate for the benefit of others, but it's still connected to something that's still alive, even if it's like buried. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, that's the second time you've kind of made reference to a kind of a protective thing. You said before that it was kind of talking fast as a survival skill.
Yeah.
What sorts of things were you surviving?
Oh God, yeah, I know. I made it sound like I was growing up in a war-torn.
No.
No.
There's all sorts of things.
Yeah, no. I think that So let's see. I'm like, where to begin? Because I feel like it's the things that like you talk about all the time, but like I would love to be able to present that sort of honestly and directly in this time, this moment. But I think so. For me. Where do I start? So I'm kid 3 of 4, middle child, which I think middle children have that.
If you're 3 or 4, you've even got to fight to be the middle.
Yeah, right.
One of two
yes,
middles.
exactly,
Yeah, okay.
exactly. And I was, very studious child. I was always a fat kid, which is like fat kids are funny because that's the way people don't tell you to like go away and die, you fat fuck. You know what I mean? Like that's just what you get, and you get it from your family before you even go to school. Do you know what I mean? Like your family is the one that's like, we got to fix you. What's wrong with you? It's like, first of all, you have too many feelings. Why do you have so many feelings? That's ridiculous. Oh, you're sensitive? Hee ha ha. So it's like, well, I can't share that with them. Why don't I just eat them? So then it's a coping skill. And then they're like, why are you doing that? Like, oh God, this is like, it's weird to be like.
Let me just there's a lot
just
to
break
unpack.
it. Sure.
So you're talking about your feelings as a kid, pre kind of fat being an issue. You mean it's you've got a lot of feelings, and that became the issue of fatness.
Yes, and at the same time, like I came out a fat baby, and then I didn't stop. Right, so like I'm gold star fatty. Now I think that. From the time that I can remember, like I had glasses since the time I was 3. I had a, cross-eyed with an astigmatism, right? Overweight kid, and was just sort of quiet and also like desperately wanted connection, engagement, which was not forthcoming. I'm sort of that sort of end of Gen X kind of latchkey kid. I was the one who watched my little brother coming home from school because my older sister and a brother, or my older half sister and brother, there's like a 9 and 13 year difference between me and them. So they were already like teenage to grown, and then it was
all the responsibility of being the oldest kid without even being the oldest kid.
Exactly. Because when you're in the middle, everyone just expects you to be raised by the ones around you. So they're just like, whatever, you're fine. We already did that. Figure it out. Here's a key. You know where you live, or if you don't, figure it out. So there is just sort of, there's that put on your shoulders of like, sort it out in terms of the practicalities of life as well as the sort of emotional life. And I don't know, I presume, being myself, that everybody needs that kind of engagement when they're young, but maybe not everyone does. I did. And that was not something that was forthcoming because whatever. Our parents did what they had to do to like all go out to jobs that were terrible and too far away and like took too much of their time and their energy to like put a roof over our heads and all of that good stuff, which as an adult, I understand the sacrifices they made. I really appreciate that. I wouldn't be in the positions that I have been throughout my life had they not done that. However, the same time, certain things were lacking, right? And so, I was left to come home after school, feed myself from whatever was bought at a Costco, from the fridge, and then just and get my homework done. So it's like, basically, I was good at being studious, so I just went really hard at like, I get attention and acceptance for being smart. And I am smart. It's something that I can do well. And I like being in class and raising my hand and having a teacher give me a gold star and all of that stuff. It is the one place where I feel like recognized, alive, like I excel, like I belong, right? So I'm going to do that.
And was the lack of recognition at home more to do with your parents not physically being there because they were working? Or was it more to do with you feeling like they didn't recognize, they didn't appreciate you?
Yes. All of the above. I mean, they were not around because they were working. My mother commuted 4 hours every day, like 2 in and 2 back into Los Angeles from the suburbs where we lived, because that's traffic in LA. And I specifically remember, this is like a therapist couch thing of being like, I'm like, I was probably like 12, like 11 or 12. And I was like, I need you to talk to me sometimes. You know, my mom being like, when I get home from work, I'm tired. I don't want to talk to you, you know? Right. And like, that's the thing that a mom's gonna, I mean, especially mothers of color, they're just like, my life's hard. Like, I'm working. I love you because you live in a house, you know, like you're not on the street, whatever. The way that my love language is providing for you. And I get and appreciate that. Mine was having some kind of emotional engagement, and there was no one in my family that spoke that language, right? So I had to kind of wait for a while to figure out if there were people in the world who did, and how I could go about finding those people and connecting to those people. So I think that was sort of the main, like whatever psychic emotional breach in my youth that I had constantly tried to sort of navigate, you know, bridge, overcome in some way. And I mean, I remember being in kindergarten, and, you know, we were all fenced in. There was like, you know, the like little kindergarten prison, and like, you know, first, second, third grade was all around. And I remember being at the fence. I don't know what I was doing. I was like making faces or doing some dance or whatever. And I remember like traditional, like snot nose, white kid, crew cut, Kool-Aid ring around his mouth, bully kid being like, oh, she's funny. Look at her, she's funny. And like, it literally clicked inside my head. And I was like, they're pointing at me and they're saying she's funny, and not look at this fat kid. And I was just like, boom, like instantaneously, like that is when it happened. When people go like,
do you think kids who are bullies get up in the morning and go, I'm going to go and create something?
I'm a kingmaker. Just coming to school in their limo.
Get back in touch with you 30 years later. I think I need 10%.
Exactly. I think you'll find I did that. I'm like, why do you still have a Kool-Aid ring around your mouth, man? Like, we're grown.
For tour dates, news, updates, whatever they are, and the latest episodes of the Comedian's Comedian podcast, go to stuartgoldsmith.com.